The people living the longest aren't the ones obsessing over cholesterol. They're not counting every calorie or taking handfuls of supplements every morning. In fact, research from Sweden shows people over 60 with the highest cholesterol levels live 30% longer than those with the lowest. A Chinese longevity study found people with the highest LDL, the thing everyone's terrified of, had a 23% lower risk of dying. This breaks the entire narrative you've been told about health. So if cholesterol doesn't predict lifespan, what does? Researchers ran a study on 120,000 people over 8 years to identify the single strongest predictor of death. They measured everything: smoking, heart disease, diabetes, weight, blood pressure, inflammation markers, all of it. One measurement dominated everything else. It was 5 times more predictive of early death than smoking, 5 times more predictive than heart disease, 5 times more than diabetes combined. But here's what makes this insane. Most people have never tested it. Your doctor probably hasn't measured it. You have no idea what your number is. Even wilder, this isn't genetic. 2 identical twins with the same DNA can be 10 to 15 years apart biologically at age 50 because one measured high and one measured low. It's completely within your control. It's reversible. You can change it dramatically in weeks. Yet people ignore it. They buy expensive supplements. They optimize everything else. They chase biohacks that cost money and deliver nothing. Meanwhile, this one metric, the one thing that actually predicts how fast you age, gets zero attention. The reason? People don't know what it is. And once you understand what it is, you're going to wonder why it isn't the only thing anyone talks about after 50. The metric is called VO₂ Max, but that name doesn't tell you much about why it matters. If you've heard the term before, you might think it's just something athletes measure. That's one of the biggest reasons people overlook it. They assume it's only relevant if you're training for a marathon or trying to break personal records at the gym. VO₂ Max is a measurement of something much more fundamental to how your body works at the cellular level. It's the maximum amount of oxygen your body can utilize during intense exercise, expressed in milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute. But here's what that actually means. It's measuring how efficiently your body can deliver oxygen to your cells and how effectively your cells can use that oxygen to produce energy. That process, oxygen delivery and utilization at the cellular level, is the foundation of everything. Your energy production, your ability to recover from stress, your cognitive function, your immune response, your capacity to maintain muscle mass. All of it depends on this system working well. Think of VO₂ Max as a measurement of your energy production capacity. Your cells generate energy in structures called mitochondria, which are like the power plants of your body. These mitochondria need 2 things to make energy: fuel, usually in the form of glucose or fat, and oxygen. Without adequate oxygen getting to where it needs to go, and without your cells being able to use that oxygen efficiently, you're fundamentally limited in how much energy you can produce. Here's why this becomes such a critical issue after age 50. Starting around your mid-40s and accelerating into your 50s, most people experience a decline in VO₂ Max. This decline happens for a specific reason. They're not doing the type of exercise that maintains or builds mitochondrial function. Without that stimulus, your body gets progressively better at producing less energy. Your mitochondria don't replicate as efficiently. The density of mitochondria in your muscle tissue decreases. Your aerobic capacity declines. The problem is that this happens silently. You don't notice it until you're trying to walk up a flight of stairs and you're catching your breath at the top. Or you're playing with your grandkids and you run out of energy faster than they do. Or you wake up in the morning and don't have the stamina you used to have, even though you're eating the same diet and taking the same supplements. This is where most people get it backwards. They clean up their diet, they eliminate sugar, they add fish oil, they start taking collagen supplements, magnesium, vitamin D, maybe they try intermittent fasting. All of those things can support health, but if your mitochondrial function is declining and your VO₂ max is dropping, you're still aging quickly at the cellular level. You're just aging slowly in other ways. The research is unambiguous on this point. Your fitness level, measured as VO₂ max, is the strongest predictor of how long you'll live and how fast you'll age after 50. Not cholesterol, not weight, not blood pressure. The efficiency of your oxygen utilization and energy production at the cellular level is what determines your biological age and your lifespan. The data from that 120,000 person study is striking when you actually look at the numbers. Researchers compared the mortality risk associated with various health conditions and found a clear ranking of which factors predicted early death most accurately. Let's start with what most people fear. High cholesterol carries a 3 times increased risk of mortality compared to normal cholesterol levels. That's meaningful, but it's not massive. High blood pressure increases your mortality risk by 1.4 times. Type 2 diabetes, also 1.4 times. Smoking, which is widely recognized as one of the most dangerous things you can do for your health, increases mortality risk by 1.4 times. Then researchers looked at VO2 max levels. They divided participants into groups based on their fitness level, measured through VO2 max testing. Those in the lowest fitness category, the unfit group, had a 5 times increased risk of mortality compared to those with normal fitness levels. That's not a 1.5 times risk. It's not double, it's 5 times higher. That means low fitness is a more powerful predictor of early death than heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and smoking combined. When you put that in context, it's almost shocking that fitness isn't the primary focus of most health and longevity protocols. What makes this even more significant is that this study controlled for other variables. Researchers accounted for age, body mass index, exercise habits, and other factors. Even after controlling for those variables, VO2 max remained the single strongest predictor of mortality risk and aging speed. There's another layer to this data that's important to understand. The relationship between VO2 max and mortality risk isn't linear. There isn't a point where you're fit enough and additional fitness doesn't matter. The research shows a dose-response relationship. The higher your VO2 max, the lower your mortality risk. There's no ceiling where more fitness becomes irrelevant. This means that regardless of where you're starting from, improving your VO2 max provides measurable benefits for longevity. Here's something that surprises most people. The cholesterol data tells a different story than what many assume. A Swedish cohort study of adults over 60 found that those with high total cholesterol had a 30% lower risk of all-cause mortality compared to those with low cholesterol. A separate Chinese longevity survey found that people with the highest LDL cholesterol levels had a 23% lower risk of mortality compared to those with the lowest LDL levels. This doesn't mean you should ignore cholesterol or assume it's irrelevant. It means the relationship between cholesterol and mortality is more complex than popular health messaging suggests, especially after age 50. Meanwhile, the relationship between VO2 max and mortality is straightforward. Higher fitness equals lower mortality risk, period. The data also reveals why most anti-aging interventions fail to produce results. People focus on variables that have relatively small effects on mortality risk while ignoring the variable with the largest effect. They spend significant money on supplements designed to slow aging at the cellular level, while neglecting the most powerful intervention available: building and maintaining VO2 max through appropriate exercise. This isn't a judgment. It's just that once you see the data, the priorities become clear. If you want to extend your lifespan and slow your biological aging after 50, optimizing your VO2 max is where the return on investment is highest. It's also completely free. You don't need to buy anything or join a gym. You just need to know what type of activity actually builds VO2 max, and then do it consistently. Understanding VO2 max requires understanding what's actually happening inside your cells when this measurement improves. The answer is about mitochondrial function and adaptation. When you're young, your body produces energy efficiently. Your mitochondria are abundant, they replicate easily, and they function well. Your cells can extract oxygen from your bloodstream and use it to produce ATP, the molecule that powers every cellular process. This is why young people can jump up and sprint without any training. Their cells are just better at making energy on demand. After age 50, this changes dramatically if you're sedentary. Your mitochondria don't replicate as frequently. The mitochondria that do exist gradually lose efficiency. This is called mitochondrial decline, and it's one of the primary mechanisms of aging. Your cells struggle to produce energy. That struggle shows up as fatigue, reduced recovery capacity, muscle weakness, and reduced ability to handle stress. Here's where the connection to metabolism and disease becomes important. Most chronic diseases associated with aging, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cognitive decline, Muscle wasting involves some component of mitochondrial dysfunction. When your mitochondria can't efficiently extract energy from food, your cells struggle. When cells struggle, tissues struggle. When tissues struggle, systems struggle. This is why metabolic disease has become such a defining health issue. People can have abundant fuel, glucose in the bloodstream, fat in their tissues, but their cells can't utilize that fuel efficiently. The mitochondria are dysfunctional, so energy production is compromised. The body responds by producing more insulin, storing more fat, increasing inflammation. It's not primarily a problem of too much food. It's a problem of inefficient energy utilization at the cellular level. VO2 max measures this efficiency. When your VO2 max increases, it means your mitochondria are replicating. Your cells are becoming more efficient at oxygen utilization, and your overall energy production capacity is increasing. This isn't just about exercise performance. This is about fundamental cellular function. Here's the practical consequence. If you have high VO2 max, your cells are efficient at producing energy. That means you have more energy available for recovery, immune function, maintaining muscle mass, and managing stress. Your nervous system doesn't have to go into survival mode because your cells have abundant energy. That abundance at the cellular level translates into resilience at the organism level. Conversely, if you have low VO2 max, your cells are struggling to produce energy. This is true even if you're eating a perfect diet. You might have all the micronutrients and macronutrients your body needs, but if the mitochondria can't process them efficiently, you're energy limited. This is why people often report that cleaning up their diet doesn't solve their fundamental fatigue problem. The diet is necessary but not sufficient if your mitochondrial function is compromised. The mitochondrial decline that typically accelerates after 50 isn't inevitable. It responds directly to stimulus. When you engage in the right type of exercise, specifically exercise that challenges your aerobic system, you send a signal to your body that says, I need more mitochondria. Your body responds by increasing mitochondrial replication, improving the efficiency of existing mitochondria, and increasing capillary density to deliver more oxygen to muscle tissue. This is also why VO2 max is such a powerful metric. It's not measuring something arbitrary. It's measuring the cumulative result of mitochondrial adaptation. When VO2 max increases, mitochondrial function has objectively improved. When it decreases, mitochondrial function has declined. This is why the research shows such a strong relationship between VO2 max and mortality. You're measuring a biological variable that directly reflects how efficiently your cells can generate energy, which determines how well every biological system functions. The interesting part is that this isn't determined by genetics in any fixed way. Two people with identical DNA can have vastly different VO2 max levels depending on their activity patterns. The genes provide potential, but lifestyle determines whether that potential is expressed. This is the epigenetics principle applied to fitness. The trigger that determines whether you age quickly or slowly after 50 isn't your genetic code. It's whether you're doing the activities that maintain and build VO2 max. The research on what actually builds VO2 max is clear and consistent. There are specific types of exercise that produce results and other types that don't, no matter how much time you spend doing them. Long, slow distance work is foundational. This includes steady-paced walking, jogging, cycling, or swimming at an intensity where you can maintain a conversation but not easily. The pace matters less than the consistency and duration. Aim for 30 to 60 minutes at a time, 3 times per week. The goal is to accumulate aerobic volume while building mitochondrial density. This type of work is low injury risk and sustainable long-term. Most people should start here and maintain this baseline regardless of what else they're doing. The key variable with long, slow distance work is what's called aerobic base building. You're training at an intensity that primarily uses fat as fuel and builds your aerobic engine. You're also increasing capillary density, the blood vessels that deliver oxygen to muscle tissue, which is one of the drivers of VO2 max improvement. The second type of activity produces faster VO2 max gains. This is high-intensity interval training, and a specific protocol called Norwegian 4x4s has the strongest research backing. The protocol is simple to describe but challenging to execute. You perform 4-minute intervals at a high intensity, the kind of intensity where you can only speak a few words at a time, followed by 4 to 5 minutes of recovery at a low intensity. You repeat this cycle 4 times. That's one session. Most people should do this once per week. The mechanism is different from long, slow-distance work. High-intensity intervals force your aerobic system to work at maximum capacity. This produces a powerful signal for mitochondrial adaptation. Your body responds by increasing mitochondrial content and improving oxygen extraction efficiency. The research shows that 4 sessions of Norwegian 4x4's protocol produces comparable aerobic gains to much larger volumes of moderate intensity training. A variation that also works well is hill sprints. Find a hill that takes 30 seconds to 1 minute to sprint up at maximum effort. Sprint up, walk down to recover, repeat 4 to 6 times. This also produces strong VO2 max adaptations and can be done once per week on a day separate from your 4x4 intervals. The third component is resistance training. While resistance training doesn't directly build VO2 max in the way aerobic exercise does, it maintains and builds muscle mass, which is a critical component of longevity. Muscle tissue is metabolically active, and more muscle means greater capacity to store glucose and generate force. Additionally, larger muscles require more mitochondria to function, so resistance training indirectly supports mitochondrial adaptation. 2 sessions per week of full-body resistance training is sufficient for most people. The final component is structured eating timing, specifically intermittent fasting. The most important variable is regularity and consistency. Many people do well with 2 meals per day and no snacking, creating a fasting window of 12 to 16 hours. Some prefer a 6-hour eating window with 2 meals within that window. The specific approach matters less than consistency and finding something you can maintain. Why does fasting matter for VO2 max and mitochondrial function? Because fasting triggers autophagy, the cellular cleanup process where your body removes damaged mitochondria and cellular components that aren't functioning well. This creates selective pressure for adaptation. When you combine fasting with exercise that challenges your aerobic system, you're providing both the stress signal, the exercise, and the recovery stimulus, the fasting, that drives mitochondrial adaptation. Here's the full protocol. 3 times per week, do 30 to 60 minutes of low-intensity aerobic activity like walking. Once per week, do Norwegian 4x4 intervals or hill sprints. 2 times per week, do resistance training targeting major movement patterns. Eat on a consistent schedule with a defined fasting window. Do this consistently for 8 weeks and your VO2 max will increase measurably. If you can only do one thing, prioritize the aerobic work, especially the high-intensity intervals. The research shows this produces the most reliable VO2 max gains. If you're currently sedentary, start with long, slow-distance work. Build your aerobic base for 4 weeks, then add the high-intensity intervals. The time investment is minimal. The protocol requires maybe 5 to 6 hours per week total, not a massive commitment. Yet this protocol directly targets the single most powerful predictor of aging speed and lifespan after 50. It's arguably the highest return activity anyone over 50 can do for longevity. Most anti-aging interventions fail because they treat aging as a problem that can be solved by adding something, a supplement, a biohack, a protocol, rather than by fixing what's actually broken at the cellular level. Resveratrol was marketed as an anti-aging compound based on early research. The reality is there's no evidence it slows aging in humans. NADUS boosters like NMN cost $70 or more per month, and there's no randomized control trial showing they extend lifespan in humans. Telomerase activators have one independently funded study that was never replicated. Spermidine has no human trials showing benefit. Urolithin A has a real mechanism, but the actual effect size in human studies is negligible. The reason these supplements get promoted is because they target something downstream in the aging cascade. Low NADUS is involved in cellular aging, so the logic is that boosting NADUS should slow aging. But that's not how biology works. If the upstream driver of aging is low mitochondrial function and poor energy production, and the downstream consequence is depleted NAD+, then adding NAD+ without fixing mitochondrial function is like adding oil to an engine that's fundamentally broken. The same logic applies to most anti-aging strategies. People focus on measurable variables that are actually consequences of poor VO2 max and weak mitochondrial function. They optimize those downstream variables while ignoring the upstream cause. That's why they spend time and money and see minimal results. There's also a genetics misconception that holds people back. Many assume that if your parents aged quickly, you will too. The research on identical twins shows this isn't true. Identical twins with identical DNA have been found to drift 10 to 15 years apart in their biological aging rates when measured at age 50. Same genes, same childhood, but different activity levels in adulthood and completely different aging trajectories. This is epigenetics. Your genes provide the blueprint, but lifestyle determines which genes are expressed. Another mistake is assuming you need expensive equipment, a fancy gym, or a personal trainer. All of the VO2 Max building protocols described above can be done with zero equipment. Walking requires no equipment. Hill sprints require only a hill. Bodyweight resistance training works fine. The most expensive component is actually optional. People also underestimate the time required to see results. Most expect changes in days or weeks. Building VO2 Max takes weeks and months. 8 weeks of consistent training is the minimum to see meaningful changes. 3 months is better. 6 months of consistent work produces substantial improvements. This is why most people quit before seeing results. They start the protocol, stick with it for 2 weeks, see no change, and assume it doesn't work. The final mistake is trying to optimize everything simultaneously. People want to maximize VO2 Max, follow a perfect diet, do resistance training, practice meditation, take the right supplements, and optimize their sleep all at the same time. That's overwhelming and leads to inconsistency. Pick the one thing, VO2 Max building, and do it consistently. Once that's automatic, add other components. The data is clear. After 50, if you want to slow your aging and extend your lifespan, build and maintain your VO2 Max. Do the work. The return is higher than any supplement, any biohack, any optimization protocol. It costs nothing, it's accessible to anyone, and the evidence is unambiguous. That's where the real anti-aging is.